welcome to Policing TV. I'm delighted to be joined by Suffolk Police and Crime Commissioner Tim Passmore, recently re-elected for strictly the third time, because the first time you were elected wasn't a re-election, Tim. So this is going to be your fourth term of office, and you are one of only two police and crime commissioners that's served as PCC since the advent of police and crime commissioners back in 2012. So many congratulations for that. Can I invite you to tell us something about that most recent election campaign, what you were hearing from those on the streets of Suffolk as you were campaigning for your re-election, and indeed your thoughts on hearing the result?
Well, to deal with your second question, Bernard, to start with, I was delighted with the result. It was better than I'd been expecting, considering the national backdrop. And I feel really humbled and honoured for a fourth term. And the reason I wanted to be re-elected, there is still a great deal more to do. Policing is a wonderful public service. We do have a very good constabulary here in Suffolk. It's a small force covering a very big area. And having that opportunity to help lead the force forward and look after the people of Suffolk, I think is really, really important. And it is a real privilege to be returned again to carry on with this work. So really, really pleased about that. Regarding the issues that came up on the doorstep, I did speak to a lot of people all over the county. Clearly not everybody. It's impossible for a PCC to get round, in our case, 480 villages and hamlets and towns, 750,000 people. But if one were to pick out themes, not in any particular order, I think clearly reducing crime is always going to be important. There's a recognition of our new policing model is helping with visibility. That was launched back in December. Really pleased about that. And with the additional officers we've now got 1,425 officers precisely at the end of March. And that's more than Suffolk has ever had before. So that certainly helps. But the main issues people would like to have focus on, there is this issue about town centre management and so on. People recognise it's not just a policing issue, but policing does play a very important role in this. And one of the things I'd like to do is see if we can have a small team of focus with in-depth knowledge of how to improve safety, public reassurance and confidence. Our county town of Ipswich, we've had successful Safer Streets funding, and that's really, really helped. But we need to build on that. We have a larger number of market towns, for example, which are very good for tourism and the economy. They also need more attention as how we work together to keep people safe and reduce crime and antisocial behaviour. Other issues that came up, dealing with rural crime. We're a big rural county, Suffolk, in Suffolk, as you know, and rural crime, particularly plant and machinery theft, livestock worrying, fly tipping, these sorts of issues, heritage crime are very, very important. And that's one of the areas I will certainly be focusing on with the constabulary and our new police and crime plan. And also if I'm reappointed to my role in the National Rural Crime Network. We've had a very good track record of combating the illegal county lines trade, but there is still more to be done. Sadly, that is now more prevalent in the countryside than perhaps it was a few years ago. So again, that focus on organised crime groups, gang crime and so on is going to be really important. Looking at economic crime, another area that came up, and I think nationally we're way behind the curve on this, of course, is tackling fraud. And it's got a huge number of different components to fraud in many areas. It doesn't affect just business, it does affect individuals and so on. And we will be announcing very soon the details of a new funding stream I've got on fraud prevention, working in conjunction with trading standards. So that's really important. And then I suppose the other thing that has a priority and will be in our new police and crime plan is what we do to try and support our young people, for those, particularly for those who've had a less fortunate upbringing and so on, so they're not exploited, getting them into work, having a purpose, practical skills. And again, I think we can do a lot more to help there with our supply chain, looking at social value in our procurement process and working with other parts of the public sector and, of course, the voluntary sector, our commissioning, dealing with domestic abuse, violence, safety of women and girls and so on. So there's a lot to do, and all of this will be building on our existing police and crime plan when we compile the new one, which we're working on already.
There's a great deal in that, and I'll acknowledge the revised policing model that for Suffolk that you've referred to, tackling fraud in there, supporting young people in there as well. Can I just acknowledging that your chief constable, kind enough to invite Policing TV in for a week fairly recently to film extensively within the force, and viewers can see that content on our Policing TV website and our YouTube channel. Tell us something about that relatively new policing model, just to give that context, and then we'll move on to touching on fraud
Yes.
and a little bit more about supporting young people.
Yeah. So the new policing model came into effect in December. It was a result of a lot of dialogue and conversation with ourselves and feedback from residents and businesses across the county. And we all know that visibility, of course, that old chestnut is really, really important. We're not going to go back to the days of Dixon and Doc Green that you and I can recall, and many other people. But what it has done, where we used to have 13, 14 community engagement officers across the county, we've changed the model so there are now 80 community engagement, community policing officers. We've divided the county up into 50 small areas. Some have clearly got just one community engagement officer, others have got two. And that improves accessibility. It does improve visibility of the uniform presence, but this is all to help reassure people, pick up the soft intelligence and other intelligence so that we can really work more effectively on combating crime, but also bringing people to justice. And during the campaign, I think there's a considerable acknowledgement that this major change brought in last December is really bearing fruit. So really, really pleased with that. But it is about public confidence, visibility, accessibility and engagement. And it goes back to the old PDM principle of the public being the police and the police are the public.
So then on to fraud. This is just a taster of each of these areas. Hopefully we'll have an opportunity on future
Yeah.
occasions to unwrap in more detail. But on fraud, now, fraud is not just a local challenge in Suffolk. It's a national, indeed
Yeah.
international challenge. But what are your thoughts on the fraud and supporting and protecting the citizens of Suffolk in this specific case?
Well, it's long been a concern of mine. I've had various cases that come across my desk, and I'm not sure that we have the capabilities nationally. I know it's run action fraud by City of London Police. It does require a great deal more investment. My understanding is when you look at the Office for National Statistics data, of course, it doesn't include fraud for some bizarre reason, which I completely fail to comprehend. It does need to be recorded because I've always thought, Bernard, if you're going to tackle a problem, you need to quantify what you're trying to tackle in the first place. And therefore, if you look at the economic damage, never mind the human cost to individuals having their pensions or savings taken and so on, small shopkeepers are particularly prone to that with credit card fraud and so on. So we really need a very big rethink. HMIC FRS brought out a report a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was called Time to Choose. And we need to work very, very carefully together across all policing agencies, be they national or local, in order to deal with it. Progress is being made, but it's not enough. It will require investment. And one of the things, of course, I think with all crime, we need to have a much greater focus, not just on the economic impact of various forms of crime, which I think there's a lot to do on that, but also preventing crime in the first place. So this new initiative I was talking about earlier on fraud prevention, we've got funding we're putting in from our own budget, as well as from the Pool Business Fund from Suffolk Public Sector Leaders, which has given a grant of £150,000 over 3 years, working with trading standards to raise awareness of fraud and how to try and prevent it. So I'm really excited about that programme. We hope to have that up and running by the end of this calendar year with a couple of people appointed in order to really hone down on that. In the meantime, I think this is conversation with the Treasury, Department for Business and Skills, as well as the Home Office. We need to take this issue very, very seriously. The pattern of crime has changed a lot, well, just since I've been PCC, with so much more now being online. And I think we need to raise the bar on what we're doing. And that's certainly something I shall be looking forward to doing with various policing bodies, the Home Office and so on as we go forward. It's an urgent problem and we've got to tackle it.
On to youth, support to young people. Tell us about that particular element.
Well, I've always been very passionate that our young people, they are our future. I'm in the ripe old age of 64, and I've always had a soft spot for young people simply because I used to run a scout group. I do a lot of rugby refereeing still. And if you give youngsters a purpose, ambition, aspiration, it really helps. I think the damage done by the lockdown for COVID has been enormous, disrupting education, the social interaction that many people had but have gone without for a few years. I can't begin to assess the damage on that, apart from the fact that I'm pretty sure from what I've experienced, it's large. And therefore, with our commissioning and grants, we work with all sorts of youth charities to give them a purpose to try and prevent crime, prevent exploitation. Everybody has potential to be good at something. And I think that's where I work with all these different youth charities and organisations is really making a difference. A few years ago, we had an underspend in our commissioning budget, and with the local community foundation, the Suffolk Community Foundation, we launched the Youth Intervention Fund. And what I can say there is through private philanthropy, we put in £80,000 of taxpayers' money, not my money, taxpayers' money, and that was actually trebled to a fund of £250,000 through private donation to help young people in all sorts of different areas. It could have been, or it did include, foster children, children in care, ethnic minorities, to try and help them realise that potential that they've got, keep them out of trouble and give them a purpose in life. I would like to be doing another thing like that going forward. I'm sure we can do that. And then there's more we need to do with our supply chain and procurement, giving opportunities for youngsters, apprenticeships, work placements and so on. And it's not about cutting the wages right down to a bare minimum, a fair and reasonable settlement for them of the work that they're doing. And I'm sure we can turn a lot of them into good people going forward. And it's based on experience in my farming days when I have employed people like that. I absolutely believe that potential is there if only we can find it. As Churchill said all those years ago, in the heart of every man is a jewel if only you can find it. Well, our job here in Suffolk is to find that jewel, and we're jolly well going to give it the best try we possibly can.